sermon, do you? That's all there is. Oh, my friends, I feel like the sermon is a little bit of a Jackson Pollock painting where I just, there's so much on identity in my head and I'm just throwing it all over the wall and we'll see what comes out, see if there's a masterpiece. That's only if you like Jackson Pollock. So as she approached her 50th birthday, Brenda Holliday began seeing another face as she looked in the mirror. She began hearing another voice when she spoke. It was her mother. When did my features change, she wondered. When did I begin to look and sound so much like her? Scientists have determined that it is your 33rd year of life when you utter the sentence, "Oh, it's true, I am becoming my parent." And for some of us, we say that and we are delighted. And for others, we say a silent prayer. Oh God, help me. Whether we are biologically connected to those who raised us or not, there are many moments in life when those who raised us show up in our identity. Sometimes they show up in our bodies. Even though we are 10 years apart, my brother and I, we look almost identical to one another. And yet when anybody sees me and my dad together, they'll say, "Oh, you are a spitting image of your dad." And when they see my brother, they say, "Oh, you look just like your mom." And yet we look exactly alike. I don't know. Sometimes they show up in our mannerisms. You can hear them in the way we laugh, or the fact that we cry always at a sad thing, or the sound of music. The way we walk. Every year, I think my dad becomes more and more like my grandfather. Maybe the way that we interact with people. Yeah, maybe it is in the way that we interact with the world. Over lunch last week with one of our members, Vic Rosenberg, he shared with me this story about his dad. And this is what you need to know, that Vic did not learn that his dad was not his biological father until he was 6 years old. Nevertheless, Irving was and is Vic's father. And so much of who Irving was is based on the story of how Irving was raised. As a young boy, Irving's mother died, and his father remarried another woman. Her name was Bessie. She was a hardy woman who drove a truck for a bakery around Syracuse. Can you just imagine that in your mind? Bessie. And she spoke her mind, and she spoke it openly and often inappropriately. A few years after they married, the Great Depression struck their family. And Irving's father discovered that his own brothers had embezzled from their business, and he died in despair. Irving was left with Bessie, and Bessie chose to raise him as her own. So Irving grew up. He graduated from NYU Law School with the highest honors. And when Irving met Madeline with her small son in tow, he didn't give it a second thought. They married, and Irving brought Vic up as his own, passing on Bessie's legacy. To this day, Vic says, "My dad was the most honorable man that I've ever met. And yes, he shows up as the angel on my shoulder, telling me who I should be." Who we are as individuals is so often intertwined with the stories of those who raised us and those who raised them. It is intertwined in the stories of the places that we call home, the cultures of those lands. It is intertwined with the times and the circumstances in which they lived, in which we live, whether we prosper or are marginalized. It can be difficult to know where they end and we begin, and either in the ways that we are like them or the ways we try not to be like them. Each one of us comes from an incredibly rich tapestry, and I have learned over time that there are no normal families. I just need you to know that. I need you to have that little voice in your head that when you look at another family and you go, oh, they look so normal. Oh, no, they're not. They really aren't. None of us has easy stories, and I really don't know who created the definition of normal and who continues to do that. But there are always secrets. There is always heartbreak. And the stories of our living can often be uncovered over a lifetime, if at all. And each story that is told of our heartbreak, of our secrets, has the power to bring new understanding. But each story that is hidden leaves us in the dark. But it shows up in who we are no matter what. Caroline McHugh believes that everyone is born into this world with one true note to sing. Did you hear that, Misa? One true note to sing. Are there enough notes? That's what I want to know. She is a self-described individualist, saying that we are not actually our stories passed down to us from our families, that we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings, we are not what we have, and we are not what we do in the world. We are not even who we love. Underlying all of those things that are typically used to describe who we are, there is something deeper in ourselves, much, much deeper. In Sanskrit, the word nam means name. On the one hand, it is the word we use to name someone or something, but it's not just the person that we see, it's their essence. We are naming their essence. Likewise, Sat in Sanskrit means the absolute and eternal being. Sat is the stillness in the center of a storm. It is the reality at the root of ourselves. And so when you put them together, Sat Nam, you find the words for true identity. It is who we are beyond the constant undulating change of our stories and our circumstances, our thoughts and our feelings. And when Caroline McHugh talks about our one true note, this is what she's referring to, our Sat Nam. And she's made it her life's work to empower and support people in discovering who their true identity is. So I've been holding that. And in April, I met Pico Iyer at the Labyrinth bookstore in Princeton, New Jersey. He wasn't in Japan, it turned out. Iyer is a journalist and writer who grew up knowing the Dalai Lama, like as a buddy. And to this day, when the Dalai Lama travels to Japan, Pico Iyer and his wife tour with him. He states that the Dalai Lama's schedule will put any head of state to shame. And yet, the Dalai Lama never seems hurried or distracted. He never loses his kindness or his serenity or poise. Caroline McHugh would say that the Dalai Lama has figured out his one true note. And in order to embody that note through these long, hard days, the Dalai Lama rises at 4 a.m. every morning and spends hours in meditation, grounding himself in the absolute eternal being. Now, I don't know if you heard that the way I hear that, which when I hear that, I'm like, 4 a.m., hours of meditation before the day begins. Yeah, I'm gonna let the true identity go. Like that's just gonna pass, you get what you get, whatever. But honestly, just this week, I heard that it only is supposed to take 8 minutes a day of meditation. That you should begin there, maybe shave 8 minutes off your Instagram time and put it into meditation. And if you begin there, you can connect. And I think that this work is important. Those 8 minutes are maybe some of the most important time of your day. In fact, that's part of what I learned on sabbatical, that to practice stillness in those 8 minutes reminds you who you are. And so often as we move from one place to another, we forget. Nevertheless, and I thought, Tuli, thank you for your prayer, because so often we have to hold one thing and another together. So we've got 8 minutes of meditation every day. We've got our true identity, our Sat Nam. And then, we're composed of carbon and oxygen. We are composed of bone and muscle, of brain and heart, living in a very real human existence. We are born to a particular place. We are brought up in specific cultures. We are raised by folks whose mannerisms, vices, and virtues are, for better or worse, passed down to us. After all, the Dalai Lama does not sequester himself in meditation, but lives out in the world. Each one of us may have one true note, but the question really is, how do we sing that note, our note, in a world that would rather we didn't sing at all? Or a world that tells us constantly and consistently that we should be singing a different note. We hide our true identities from each other, says Quaker teacher Parker Palmer, because we are afraid. Afraid that our inner light will be extinguished, or that our inner darkness will be exposed. And in the process, we become separated from our own souls. We end up living these divided lives, so far removed from the truth we hold within that we cannot know the integrity that comes from being who we really are. How can we know our true identities when we have a mask on? Or when we've stuffed them so far down that no one will ever know, including us? I actually laughed because I'm like, no wonder our parents are showing up. There's nobody else there. We've stuffed it so far down. Courtney Martin points out it's never been more asked of us to show up as only slices of ourselves. On Friday night, my 10-year-old daughter and I attended Chatham's first TEDx event. Everybody knows what a TED Talk is? Yes? Yeah? So they are ideas worth spreading, but the TEDx is a local independent event in which they're bringing local stories out into the world. And so we listened to 4 Chatham teenagers and 4 Chatham adults tell their story and spread a few ideas. One of them was our school superintendent, Dr. Michael LaSousa, and let me tell you, that man can give a good TED Talk. In fact, as he was talking, and then when the applause in the audience went up at the end, I had to sort of keep myself from giving him a standing ovation because I was just so impressed. And I don't know why I kept myself from giving him a standing ovation, but nobody else was, so I just felt like I couldn't. I'm working on it. So, Dr. LaSousa shared what the practice of running has taught him. And he shared something that, as a runner, changed my mind. He says, when you start running, you can run for 2 minutes, and you run 2 minutes every day, and you run it for a week. And you will get better. And then you will get incrementally better. So you add another minute the next week, and you'll get better. And another minute, and another minute. And that's how he worked himself to run all the way around the island of Manhattan. Just 1 minute at a time. He said if he were a coach, a running coach, he would do something that is different than what we are normally told to do. Normally we're told if you want to become a runner, schedule yourself for a 5K in August and then meet that goal. And he says that's not really how we should do it. We should instead work our way incrementally to get better, and when we're ready, run the 5K. What does this have to do with our children, he asked us. And then he said to an auditorium full of successful, high-achieving parents, we are not teaching our children that they can grow one step at a time. We are saying by this date, you must be here. And not just you, all of you. He said that our pressure cooker environment, one that tests you year in and year out to see if you are enough, is directly affecting the skyrocketing rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide in children and in teenagers. Stuffing our true identities is quite simply killing us, he said, and we have to take note. So there's this one side of the coin when it comes to identity making, where we only show up as a slice of ourselves, because we stuff the rest away. But the word identity comes from the Latin identitas, and it is the set of characteristics by which a person is known. It's how we are known by others. So on the one hand, it's how we're showing up in the world, and the other, it's how we are seen. And so often, how we are seen is collapsed down into one aspect of ourselves. It can be the color of our skin, it can be our size, the gender that we represent, our ethnicity, our religion, maybe even who we hold hands with. And when we do that, we do ourselves a great disservice because we're not seeing the person. I invite you this week to watch a series of videos on YouTube called How You See Me. You'll see different people telling the stories of how people have approached them and seen them for only one thing. And I'll share a little part of something that happened to me last week. On Sunday afternoon, I went to a memorial service. It was somebody that I had grown up with. Her mother had died, and I wanted to show my support to her, and I hadn't seen her in years. I was coming directly from the Pride event, so I had my clergy collar on, my blue shirt with my clergy collar on, and I showed up to the memorial service, and then afterwards there was a reception. And at the reception, we hugged, we said hello, we talked a little bit, and probably like 20 minutes in, she looked at me and she goes, I can't put it together. I said, well, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, here you are, the person I've known and loved, in a clergy collar. Now, this is a woman whose father was the chaplain of Lafayette College. Like, it's not like she's immune to religion. Like, she appreciates it. But she's like, I just can't do this. What? And I said, I'm still me. I just have a collar on. Would it help you if I took it off? And I did. And she felt better. That's what I'm saying. Like, so often I put the collar on, and I know people can only see me as one thing. They don't get the full identity. And we have to hold that in our mind. So I want to share one final story. One story that came to us at the TEDx event that I find to be an essential story of life. And it came from a father, Tessa's dad. Because anyone who's a parent knows that once you have a kid, you no longer have your own name. You are now defined by being someone's parent. Tessa's dad. And I want to share with you that it is said that children up to the age of 7 years old know their one true note. Children and people over the age of 70 who don't give a damn anymore what people think. Well, Tessa was a kid, 9 years old, who had no problem singing her one true note. When another person asked her once who she was, she said, I am who I am, who I am. Man, I need that, right? The hardest part was that Tessa was born into a male body. And yet from a very, very early age, Tessa knew that she was a girl. Now, it wasn't hard for Tessa. She was who she was, who she was. But it was hard for Tessa's dad. And he had a long journey. It's often hard to love people for who they really are. And he shared with that auditorium full of people his anger, his denial, and finally, his realization. Because he made a startling realization. He was afraid that his daughter, if she lived into her true identity, that she would be persecuted for that her life would have a tragic ending, and so he wanted to prevent that. Because everything he read, from stories to statistics of transgender people, he only saw tragedy, and he thought that if he could stop her from being a her, that he could prevent the tragedy. And then Tessa's dad made a realization The tragic ending would only happen, he realized, if her family, her friends, her community, and yes, if her dad couldn't see her and love her for who she was. And he shared that with all of us, saying that Tessa made him understand what it truly meant to be a man, what it truly meant to be a parent. What did I know? What did I know, says the poet, of love's austere and lonely offices? Tessa's dad told us one more thing, and that was that when he finally started telling their story, when he started to let it out into the open, the hidden places in himself and his own hardship, other parents would come up to him and they would have relief on their faces. Oh, you don't have it all together as well. I have also been hiding this. And suddenly, true identities, hidden stories kept popping up. They could see who they really were. So yes, everyone has one true note to sing, but true identity is not just about knowing your note. It's not only about those 8 minutes. It is about the 8 minutes. And it is also about how we are known. And so that's why I say that everyone needs a community in which they can live an undivided life, where you can grow up into your true identity, no matter what your age, and keep on growing until you die. So when our congregation speaks our mission statement, wah, 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 of radical inclusion, I believe we are inviting people to show up as our real selves. We are saying you don't have to pretend here. Wasn't it Kurt Vonnegut who said, "We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be"? Houses of worship, I mean, I hear this all the time. Oh, you work in a church? Churches, synagogues, congregations are often the exact place where people think that you have to pretend. You had to look nice today, you had to put on your best clothes, you have to look like you've got it all together, nobody knows your faults, don't reveal anything. But this congregation really wants to be different. We should put a sign out on the front that said, "Hidden parts welcome." Contradictions here, show up. Because I will tell you, we've all got them. And it's not that our congregation has this down, we work on it furiously, but it is our aspiration. And in any congregation, you know who the wise ones are when it comes to identity? I told you. 7-year-olds and under, 70 and up, right? They're your wise ones. Somebody said it's our wrigglers and our wrinkles. Wrinklers. That's. Somebody in line at first service told me that 70 and up don't have it down, so I don't know. But here, I want you to help me remember this. I would like for you, even though you won't like it, to turn to the next person next to you. Tom, I'm looking at you. Turn to the person next to you, and I want you to say to that person, "I am who I am, who I am." And I want the person that you say it to say, "I see you." And then say the reverse. Ready? Go.
I am who I am, who I am.
I see you.
I see you.
I am who I am.
I see you.
I don't think that. Yeah, what's that? Okay. No, I have a son in Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I have a 7-year-old son.
Just so you know, all you're saying is, "I am who I am, who I am, and I see you."
Who I am, let's say more.
You'll get to connect with one another in a minute. My friends, I want you to know, I see you. Amen.